Hello, I'm Richard Gisbert, and you're at the Listening Post. This week, Pakistan. The general, the elections, and the media. Will we get the real story? Rewriting the visual grammar of television news. Are we about to see the demise of the noddy? And now you hear her.
If the mothers ruled the world, there would be no...
Now you don't. An award-winning actress goes too far for Fox. Welcome back. Pakistan has been in the headlines this past week with President Pervez Musharraf's announcement that he'll turn in his uniform and end 8 years of military rule, but only after he runs for re-election next month. That move has been pored over and analyzed by a domestic media that have been highly critical of Musharraf's military government. The international news media is on the story too. They examine any political development in Pakistan for implications for the so-called war on terror. And since Reporters Without Borders recently said that media freedoms in Pakistan are under threat, the upcoming elections could well prove to be a litmus test. That's our starting point this week, Pakistan's rapidly evolving media and the potentially decisive role they could play in the upcoming elections, if the authorities allow them to. News coverage from and about Pakistan is a growth industry. This month, it was the return and instant expulsion of former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif and the outcry that provoked from pro-democracy voices. 2 reporters said they were beaten by police. July saw the storming of the Red Mosque in Islamabad, when President Musharraf's military took on Islamic militants and more than 100 people were killed. One of the clerics used live television to try to negotiate a truce. Before that, it was the showdown over the independence of the Supreme Court, between the Musharraf government and the lawyers who took to the street in some of the best-dressed protests ever seen on TV. That is the Pakistan the world sees through international media. But there is a difference between that and the version of Pakistan presented by its own domestic media.
There is an obvious difference of perception and attitudes between the international media and the Pakistani media. To the foreign media, the only point of interest in Pakistan is the war on terror.
It's a constant refrain in the local domestic media that why is Pakistan waging a war against its own people? Why are Muslims killing other Muslims? Nobody in the local media is concerned about what these Muslims are doing and the difficulties that they are creating for the international community and indeed for Pakistan in terms of the long run.
Pakistani media is very, very, Pakistan-centric. It does not have a world view of itself. Unless an American envoy is coming in, unless an Indian government official is in to discuss something. Otherwise, it's very, very domestic.
Pakistan's media landscape is unrecognizable from what it was when General Musharraf seized power in 1999. At the time, the country had one TV channel, Pakistan TV, state-run, which millions of Pakistanis shunned in favor of privately owned channels from India available via satellite. Musharraf called himself a modernizer, so he opened up the airwaves. Now, Pakistan has 26 channels, many of which have recently grown critical of the president whose new broadcast policy brought them to life.
The government did try to lean on the media in order to stop it from becoming so free once it had been given its freedom. But I think the cat is loose, the genie is out of the bottle, and it's going to be very difficult to shut this media up. And so therefore, I think the hostility in government is really against the electronic media.
One reason for that, Pakistan has a very low literacy level. No one's quite sure of how low. Estimates are around 50%.
That being so, obviously the visual and the electronic media gets much more importance than the print media because there are so few people who can read a newspaper. So obviously the impact of the print media and the electronic media, they're very different. The electronic media's impact is probably 50 times more than that of the print media. And the government and everybody else knows that.
Which explains why, when the Musharraf government moves on one of its periodic crackdowns against the news media, it usually focuses on TV. Global attention was paid to the temporary banning of controversial broadcasts on GOTV this year. And BBC's Urdu language service covered the story when one of the most risque programs on Pakistani TV, a talk show hosted by a cross-dressing man who calls his female character Begum Nawazish Ali, was also knocked off the air for a time.
Personal thing. You're looking beautiful. Thank you, darling. Wearing your sari, looking beautiful.
But here's the paradox. Before the ban, the show's host praised President Musharraf for liberalizing Pakistani media.
Because it's ironic how a dictator, an army general who's the president, has given media the kind of freedom that media had not seen in the last 58 years that we've been around. Really. Musharraf, I don't think I would have been able to do what I do had Musharraf not been there.
Pakistani TV now offers a range of political satire shows that routinely target President Musharraf. This one is called Pillow Talk and has the president phoning President Bush from his bed.
Hello, Bush. The number you have dialed is not responding at the moment. Please try later. Oh bhai, oh baba, topiyan na kara. Teri topiyan sunte sunte main jawan ho gaya hu. I don't know, but main sign nahi kar sakta. Mujh pe bahut pressure hai. जब तक तुम टेररिस्ट नहीं पकड़ सकते मैं साइन नहीं कर सकता। ओ बाबा तुम तो ऐसे कह रहे हो जैसे किसी जनरल स्टोर पे गए और बोल दिया और नदीम गिफ्ट वाले से अच्छी तरह रैप करवा के उस पे कार्ड लगवाओ ओपन विद स्माइल फॉर बुश विद लव।
Yes, political satire has come back. All televisions, the important television networks, they have at least one or two programs, very strong political satire, and the government has taken it, with a smile.
There is a sort of irony in this because it's Musharraf who has liberated the electronic media, both radio and television. It is because of him that you have a plethora now of independent television stations. And it is this independence now which has sort of hit him the hardest.
The Pakistani media, both the print sector and all those new channels, know that the acid test of their freedom will be how much the government will allow in coverage of the upcoming elections.
This government certainly is going to find this free media very difficult to control in the elections, during the elections. It's going to find it very difficult to stuff ballot boxes. One little incident here, the media is going to play it up hugely, and it's going to have a hugely negative impact.
All the elements are there for a possible showdown. Pakistan's media genie may well be out of the bottle, but this wouldn't be the first time a government or a powerful military tried to put it back. Our Global Village Voices now with their take on where things stand in Pakistan.
I feel the government are trying to influence, certainly, the media in the way they portray images, and the media has a lot of freedom there now, which it's discovered, or not discovered, but is making use of it. Certainly I feel that there isn't an independent body regulating any of those channels, and I think that's where a lot of the problem lies, and it really shouldn't be for the government to control the media there. It should be an independent authority, which there isn't one at the moment.
The media depends on the advertisements of the state, which are very lucrative, and although there's apparently no pressure, but they come to realize at a time where the national interest is involved, or where there are issues that the government wants to be highlighted in a favorable light, that there does appear a pressure. By and large, one cannot say that in Pakistan the media is such where it can be manipulated by the administration or vice versa. It's part of the whole thing, and the upshot is that people are enjoying the freedom of media in Pakistan.
If you've got something to say about the media, good or bad, and want to be one of our Global Village Voices, just email us at listeningpost@aljazeera.net. We're always looking for more voices wherever they come from. Time now for Listening Post News Bites. The official verdict is in, but they're still wondering in Russia. Did Ivan Safronov jump, or was he pushed? Safronov, the defense correspondent for the newspaper Kommersant, was found dead at the foot of his apartment block earlier this year. There were suspicions of foul play since Safronov was writing about supposedly secret arms deals involving Russia, Syria, and Iran. The official explanation has concluded that it was a suicide, although Safronov's newspaper is arguing that that verdict makes no sense. With 13 contract-style killings of journalists since 2000, Russia is now ranked the third most dangerous country in the world for reporters. Picking up now on a story that we reported on our last program. Much of the focus on the Iraq war debate in the U.S. this past week has been over an ad. The progressive anti-war group MoveOn.org placed the ad in the New York Times last week, questioning the integrity of U.S. General David Petraeus and his testimony to Congress on the war. Democrats and Republicans have been going at it over the ad ever since.
I mean, this thing has been a godsend to Republicans this week. Rudy Giuliani has used it not only as an opportunity to go after Hillary Clinton, but to go after...
And the pro-war group, Freedom's Watch, which is headed by President Bush's former press secretary, countered with an ad of its own.
America and the forces of freedom are winning. Move on is losing. Surrender is not an option. Victory is America's only choice.
Presidential candidate John McCain says that Move On should be thrown out of the country for the ad, which wouldn't be easy since the group has more than 2 million members. That would create a refugee problem roughly akin to what is happening in Iraq. There was an odd moment, some dead air broadcasters call it, at the Emmys this week. That's the awards show that recognizes the best in U.S. television programming. Veteran actor Sally Field won an award for her role as the matriarch in the series Brothers and Sisters. During her acceptance speech, Field was impassioned and political.
And let's face it, if the mothers ruled the world, there would be no goddamn wars in the first place.
Now that's what viewers in Canada saw. Americans who are watching on Fox, whose news network is pro-war, never heard that part of the speech. Fox censored it.
And let's face it, if the mothers ruled the world, there would be no... Thank you so much.
The channel said it cut the comment because of bad language, not for political reasons, but its critics have not bought that explanation, and they've been lambasting the network for political censorship. Another example now of the Egyptian government's lack of tolerance for critical media, news reporting it does not approve of. Bloggers and underground journalists have been targeted over the past year, and recently 4 tabloid editors were sentenced to a year's imprisonment and fines of around $3,500 for spreading false information about Egyptian President Hosni Mubarak and his son Gamal. The papers had published articles denouncing Mubarak for anti-Hezbollah remarks. These sentences come after an incident that we reported on last week when bloggers and then some newspapers published false rumors of President Mubarak's death. And Time, the US-based international news magazine, is looking at a hefty $106 million bill to pay to former Indonesian Prime Minister Suharto. The magazine lost a defamation case in Indonesia against the retired dictator for a cover story it published in 1999 in which it alleged corruption in the Suharto family. The Indonesian Supreme Court made the ruling, overturning a verdict that a lower court had reached. One of Time's lawyers called the decision a blow to freedom of the press in Indonesia, especially since it is the same court that will be hearing a $1.5 billion civil suit soon against Suharto, which alleges corruption and stealing from the state. Coming up after the break, why some broadcasters are saying the noddy's a no-no.